During the 1600s, the island at the Hudson River's entrance moved between powers like sand in a changing wind. It began as a humble Dutch outpost known as New Amsterdam. Later, it became a prized possession for competing kingdoms. Rough timber homes, dirt pathways, and a sturdy small fortress defined its earliest days. When British warships appeared on the horizon, control shifted without any fighting. The Dutch language faded as fresh rulers took charge, bringing a different name with them. As the century closed, the outpost stood increasingly crowded and eager, a meeting point for ambition perched on the rim of an enormous landmass. This is New York during the 1600s. In 1609, Henry Hudson's arrival established the first European presence along the waterway that would eventually bear his name. His men set foot on a forested tidal coastline crisscrossed with Lenape trading paths. A quiet landing, unremarkable at first, but it drew traders, colonists, and rival powers. A simple beginning, plain and uncertain, yet it unlocked everything that came after. In 1626, Dutch authorities obtained Manhattan from the Lenape through a transaction later estimated at 60 guilders in trade items. The arrangement was understated, businesslike, and profoundly misinterpreted between cultures. Still, it granted the Dutch a position they wasted no time fortifying. During New Amsterdam's earliest years, constructing the settlement demanded grueling, relentless effort. Colonists chopped down dense Manhattan woodlands using hand tools, hauling massive logs through thick mud to erect houses, defensive walls, and storage buildings. The sounds of wood smoke, perspiration, and splitting timber echoed constantly as the small outpost clawed its way out of untamed land. One log, one board, one exhausting day after another. That same year, Fort Amsterdam emerged at Manhattan's southern edge, a crude barrier of wooden stakes and packed earth protecting the fledgling Dutch outpost. From its elevated platforms, guards monitored the harbor's changing waters, the company warehouses below, and New Amsterdam's vulnerable beginnings. It served as both defense and declaration, a foothold designed to endure. In 1644, Dutch authorities and indigenous leaders negotiated a sequence of tentative treaties aimed at ending years of violence. Across council fires and improvised meeting places, representatives exchanged wampum, commitments, and reluctant compromises. The agreements brought a precarious, hard-won peace, born more from weariness than mutual trust. Still, they gave New Amsterdam room to recover and expand. By 1655, enslaved Africans arrived in New Amsterdam in increasing numbers, their compelled work embedded into the colony's warehouses, fields, and homes. Treated as commodities by the Dutch West India Company, they endured strict controls and constant oversight. This marked a quiet yet devastating shift, as bondage became a foundational element of the settlement's early economic structure. Inside a mid-17th century New Amsterdam dwelling, daily existence centered around a single cramped room heated by a brick fireplace. Pale daylight came through small glass-paned windows, illuminating rough-hewn furniture, woven blankets, and simple pewter goods arranged on wooden shelves. Households woke before dawn to the aroma of hot grains and the sound of benches dragging across packed dirt floors. Children assisted by grinding corn or hauling buckets from the well, while grown-ups focused on endless tasks, repairing fishing nets, chopping kindling, preserving meat with salt for the cold months ahead. Wood smoke, dried plants, and the cool moisture from the nearby river mixed in the air that seeped through gaps in the walls. When evening came, the pace slowed but never stopped. Candles flickered as families gathered, sharing tales, offering quiet prayers, and setting out their implements for the next day's labor. It was a plain, orderly existence built on collective effort. Each activity, preparing meals, stitching fabric, cleaning floors, caring for animals, carried the unchanging pulse of endurance in a young and vulnerable outpost. In 1664, British warships entered the harbor, their cannons aimed at the fortress still flying Dutch colors. Outgunned and fractured, New Amsterdam mounted barely any defense. Stuyvesant's objections dissolved beneath colonists seeking more stable governance. Through a peaceful handover, the settlement transferred to British control and received a different name, New York. Its path altered without any gunfire. In 1667, the Treaty of Breda officially confirmed what military pressure had started. The Dutch relinquished New Netherland to England in return for far-off holdings in Suriname. The document established New York as British land, extinguishing Dutch ambitions to recover the outpost. Through diplomatic agreement, the settlement's new character, its regulations, allegiances, and destiny became anchored to the English Empire. In 1673, Dutch vessels stormed into the harbor and seized the settlement with swift action, rechristening it New Orange and raising familiar banners for one turbulent year. However, negotiations outpaced warfare. Through the following treaty, the outpost returned to England. New Orange transformed back into New York. The episode was fleeting, a brief glimpse of the former Dutch presence before the British future locked permanently into place. By 1679, the former Dutch Stad Huys functioned as New York's municipal headquarters, a remnant of New Amsterdam now operating under British authority. Traders, officials, and clerks passed through its narrow chambers, resolving conflicts and documenting the affairs of an increasingly diverse harbor. The structure stood as evidence of the settlement's Dutch origins, still functional, still important, even as New York advanced into its transformed character. Around 1680, New York was growing rapidly under British governance. The inhabitants exceeded 4,000. Fresh brick structures appeared along the thoroughfares, and the harbor bustled with cross-Atlantic commerce. Simultaneously, the enslaved population rose dramatically, defining the outpost's workforce and everyday existence. By 1679, New York's Great Dock extended into the East River as the settlement's most active entry point. Traders, seamen, and workers filled its wooden platforms, offloading casks of sugar, pelts, and tobacco as fresh vessels arrived from the Atlantic. The dock's endless noise and activity reflected the settlement's expanding aspirations. A modest harbor quickly becoming an essential connection in the empire's commerce. By 1680, New York's buildings still displayed pronounced Dutch characteristics: sharp peaked roofs, brick fronts, and heavy wooden supports. Despite years under British administration, newer constructions incorporated English elements like sliding glass windows or wider smokestacks, yet the lanes remained noticeably Dutch in form and character. The settlement, like its inhabitants, existed as a mixture in flux. The former defensive barrier still outlined the settlement's northern boundary, stretching along what would later become Wall Street, its wooden fortifications weathered but standing. Where the barrier reached the East River sat the Water Gate, a simple reinforced entrance where wagons, visitors, and river cargo passed into town under careful observation. In 1689, New York's train band, the civilian militia, assembled during turmoil following the Glorious Revolution. Traders, craftspeople, and workers practiced formations on the commons, a combination of Dutch, English, and locally born men trapped in changing allegiances. During the chaos, numerous officers endorsed a statement supporting Jacob Leisler and rejecting the previous royal appointees. Yet the uprising proved temporary. Despite their brief moment of determination, they finished the year once more beneath royal command. In 1689, New York felt strained and volatile. Reports from England told of monarchs ascending and descending thrones, leaving the outpost uncertain whose power actually governed. Merchants debated in drinking establishments, soldiers trained on public grounds, and common folk watched the harbor for vessels that might deliver commands or disorder. The settlement existed in anxious suspension, trapped between gossip, doubt, and the changing currents of empire. By 1693, New York policemen patrolled a settlement thundering with manufacturing and congested roads. Dressed in navy blue wool with brass fastenings, they covered assigned routes through saloons, crowded housing blocks, and gas lamp-lit boulevards. Attempting to maintain control in a city expanding faster than regulations could manage, their presence was consistent but stretched thin, positioned between increasing lawlessness, political demands, and the restless vitality of Gilded Age New York. By 1699, Pearl Street had emerged as one of New York's most active passages, bending along the former waterfront, where merchants, skilled workers, and sailors packed its timber establishments. The smell of pitch, exotic goods, and harbor breezes moved through the lane, evidence of how closely the settlement existed alongside the ocean that nourished it. By the century's close, New York stood transformed. What began as a modest Dutch trading station had become a thriving British colonial center, home to diverse peoples speaking different tongues, practicing different faiths, bound together by commerce and necessity. The settlement's muddy lanes now carried the weight of imperial ambition, its harbor welcoming ships from distant continents, its future stretching toward horizons the first Dutch settlers could never have imagined. A city was taking shape. That's 1600s New York, from Dutch outpost to British prize. But the story's just beginning. Subscribe and tell us what era deserves reconstruction next. The revolution, the immigrant floods, the rise of the skyscrapers, maybe a different city? The choice is yours.